Hey everybody, it is Love and Relo. I'm your host, Ben Cross. We are the voice of the relocation industry, and it is my honor today to bring you Lauren Herring, the CEO of Impact Group. How are you doing, Lauren?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks, Ben, for having me.
Yeah, this is really lovely. I think we connected at ERC maybe a couple of years ago.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah, I think it was at the Atlanta ERC.
Was that the first time? Was the first time we met at that session that I did?
I can't remember, but I know we talked afterwards, and
Yes.
we had known of each other for a while. So it was the first time that we were able to actually connect and just talk. So it's great to continue the conversation here.
Well, so the show is called Love and Relo, and it's really about the people in the relocation industry and the stories and the personalities and some of the ideas as well. And I got to tell you, my first impression of you was amazing because I was in a very vulnerable place. I just hosted a dumpster fire of a session at ERC.
Oh yeah.
And it was so mortifying. It's probably one of the most embarrassing things that's ever happened to me in the ERC community. And you were very, very nice to me about it and chose to see the silver lining on my rain cloud. And I really, really appreciate you for that.
Hey, there's always opportunities to keep moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. And that's a nice little plug actually for your company, Impact Group. Isn't that your slogan?
Yeah, we actually move careers forward. So
yeah.
I did not intend that, but
so on brand.
Look at that.
All right. Well, tell us really quick while people kind of filter in and get in here and watch us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. By the way, everybody, as you're coming in, please check in. Let us know where you're coming from. Stand up and be heard. In the meantime, Lauren, tell us a little bit about Impact Group. What is Impact Group?
Sure. Impact Group, at our core, we are a coaching company. So we have three main lines of business, and everything we do is focused on careers and career development and leadership development. So our main focus in the relocation space is helping the employee and the family integrate and adjust during and following the move. And that includes acclimating to the new area through settling in support, as well as dual career spouse and partner support. So helping that accompanying partner find employment in the new location. So that is what we've been doing for over 30 years now in the relocation industry. Wow. And then we also have two other main parts of our business. Although relocation is our roots and one of our main core functions, we also do a job search career coaching program for people who have been laid off. And so that's actually a piece of people's severance package that gets included, and that is a service called outplacement. So we have a focus on delivering outplacement services to people who are in career transition. And then also we do leadership development, primarily for that middle to high potential type leader who is really also a great target for the mobility space as well. That's who we're moving. And with a focus on women in particular, in addition to high potentials.
Okay, wonderful. We got some people checking in here on LinkedIn and Facebook. So I really quick want to give some shout outs here. And if you haven't checked in, please let us know where you're coming from. Hit that like button, hit that celebration button in this corner there, and let us know that you're there. We do appreciate it. It means the world. Joshua Rose, sup, Ben? Sup, Joshua? Stephen Meyer, Arpin driver, Nashville, cruising across America. Stephen always checks in. I got this driver on the road out there. He's always checking in. Appreciate you, Stephen. Be safe out there.
Yeah, and by the way, for Josh from South Bend, I went to Notre Dame, so I'm all about South Bend. Was just there a couple of weeks ago.
Well, I don't know where Josh was from. He said sup, Ben.
Oh, sup, Ben. Sorry.
That's fine. Maybe it's from South Bend. I don't know. Joshua, please clarify where you're from for real, because we have no clue what's going on. Neither one.
And clearly I don't have very good hearing. I must need to get that checked.
Well, yeah, I got 3 bars on the Wi-Fi, so you and me both. Kirk, Blue Ball, Ward, North American, Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, Kirk. John Stanborough, here we go. London, UK in the house. My man from Baggage Hub. All right. Victoria McCullough, we work with the Impact Group for my client. They're a great outfit.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Victoria.
And Ryan Charles says, go USC. I don't know where USC's going, but maybe down the drain.
I asked for that with my Notre Dame comment.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, that's right, the rivalry. And then Mario Cunningham, hey, Ben, Legacy Transit Lines out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Hey, Mario. Thanks, everybody, for checking in. Keep hitting that like button, that celebrate button. Let us know if you have any questions for Lauren as we kind of go through our talk here today. We will be answering those live. I always love when you guys check in and kick something out there. Sometimes it's crazy. Sometimes it's really insightful. Don't let fear of being crazy stop you. Donald Hatt, hello from Minnesota. So wonderful. We got Janet Turner here on the book. Hey, from hot and sunny Sorrento, Florida. Janet, I love you. Brian Crockett, Denali Group, Seattle, Washington. Awesome. Cool. So getting back to you, Lauren, thank you for letting me do that. My little process there. So one thing I've just always noticed about you is, well, before we get into it, you've been at Impact Group for a long time. Tell me a little bit about your mobility journey and how you got into mobility and how you find yourself where you are today.
Sure. Well, I actually grew up in mobility, and I remember going to ERCs when I was about 10 years old. That's when my mom started the company. So my mom, Laura Herring, is our founder, and she saw a need in the space of the spouse employment and really just that broader family support during the process.
Hold on a second. Was spousal support even a thing?
No, of course it was. Back in the 80s, not a chance.
So she created a space then.
Yeah, she really did. So it's such a cool story. And she was at the time a practicing psychologist, and her work was actually in the early days of the EAP world, where people were being referred in when they were in a crisis moment. And what she would oftentimes find is that when you peel back the onion to where the root cause of the issue was, a lot of times she would find relocation and corporate relocation being a factor that drove families into a crisis mode.
Yeah.
And she was also doing some work on a consulting basis with McDonnell Douglas at the time, so now Boeing. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, she was working with the spouses while the executives were in a retreat. And so she was the entertainment, if you will, for the spouses. And they would do these seminars. And again, relocation was coming up again and again as a challenge in their personal family existence. The interesting thing is she was able to connect this professional trend that she was seeing with a personal experience. So when she was about 13 years old, she and her family moved with Merck to, they were living in St. Louis at the time. So get this, it was a New Jersey family. They were originally from New Jersey. They had moved to St. Louis. They loved St. Louis, had this idyllic family experience. And then my grandfather was then moved to be a manager of one of their distribution centers in Memphis, Tennessee. So in 1960, this New Jersey family moves to Memphis. And
very Southern, very different culture.
It was traumatic. So
right.
I honestly kind of think that my mom looks at that experience as the death of her childhood at 13. My grandmother never felt like she fit in to the Memphis Southern society. And so it changed the trajectory of the family. So anyway, between taking that personal experience of moving and how she could equate herself with some of the challenges she was seeing in her personal life, she took the hugely brave step to shut down her private practice at the time and start a business that didn't exist at the time to support what were then called trailing spouses. And
right.
I hope that your listeners get lots of valuable things to take away from this. One of the things I would love for there to be a groundswell around is let's stop using the word trailing spouse. I find it to be kind of derogatory and like you're dragging a spouse by the hair.
Yeah.
And let's use accompanying partner or accompanying spouse. I've even heard accompanying talent, because nowadays, we'll get to it later, we did a survey at Impact Group, and one of the things that we found is the average salary for accompanying talent is over $70,000 a year. It's actually now over $75,000 a year. And so the idea that these are, people that really are just have no other option, or they're stay-at-home wives, it's gone. These are professionals in their own right, and we need to respect them as such.
I love it. I've learned something already. 10 minutes in. 10 minutes, that's usually my markers. Like, can I learn something within the first 10 minutes? If so, it's going to be a good.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it was 10:43. Does that count?
Well, you started making your point early. You
okay.
Just, yeah, no, we're good. We're good. So now we're rebranding trailing spouse to now accompanying talent. Trailing spouse does seem like it's kind of victim-y, Yeah, I like it. So you write so many things. I've read your articles. You're always posting articles on LinkedIn. You're very prolific like that. You write for Mobility Magazine. You've written something recently for was it Benefits News?
Yeah, Employee Benefit News.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I'm gonna ask you about. I'd like you to explain to our audience, about that article and what it was. But first, I want to commend you for going outside of the traditional channels to get this message out. This has been one of the messages I keep pounding on, which is we have to stop preaching to the choir and we have to preach to the congregation. We have to save the unsaved out here. Okay. There's a lot of HR generalists out there in the world, or benefits people or comp people or whatever, who don't really understand how strategic and important relocation and mobility can be. And we have to start bringing that message to them via other channels. Yeah. And I'd love to hear about Employee Benefit News in the article you wrote recently.
Sure. This just came out a couple weeks ago, and it is a concept that I am really trying to bring out in the mobility industry, what I'm calling human-centered relocation. And this is the concept that, we all know this. We're moving people. We're not moving jobs. We're not moving boxes. We are helping people move their lives, move their careers. And the more that we can support people with the holistic aspect of what they're undertaking on behalf of the company, the better. And that's going to end up playing out well for the company by supporting their whole life in the transition. So we already know, which has been the case for years, that the number one reason why people decline a relocation offer is because of personal and family reasons, and following that, spouse employment. And so we know that's why people aren't accepting moves. We also know why moves fail, same reasons, personal and family reasons, and spouse career. So if we know where our greatest source of problems are, how can we actually start the focus of the relocation process right from there? And then we can make sure that everything we're building around it is also supporting the big picture of the relocation. And we all know that we have to move the boxes. We have to help people find and move into a house. So those things are going to get done anyway. But a lot of times, even the employees and the families themselves don't even think about the huge, just all the other things that are going on around them, and how we can, how the organization can actually support them with that undertaking.
Give us some ideas. Give me some examples, because I've seen it firsthand with friends who have accepted assignments and opportunities in other places, and they go and they tell their spouse they're they tell their accompanying talent, hey, this is the opportunity we have. This, this happened to me in a way, not to an extreme measure, but actually it was funny. So I'm going to tell a personal story about my accompanying talent. Okay. The day my wife got offered the most money she has ever been offered and a new director level position at a company, she was so excited. The very next day, I got offered my dream promotion also. Mm-hmm. And her new job was in Dallas and my new job was in North Carolina. And
wow. And they both required to move?
We were in Dallas at the time. So one was to stay and one was to go. And we ultimately decided to go and pursue my career. And we ended up starting a family in North Carolina, and she actually ended up leaving the workforce and staying home, still home for like the last 4 years. And that's been her prerogative. But we had to make that decision. And when we did, that loss of income was a very real thing for us in North Carolina. Her mentality and her ability to find community and find and fit in and latch on to that new community was an issue that we faced. I've had other friends that have had this conversation, and I think maybe it was less of a two-way street when they had it. And it was like, this is what we're doing. It was just kind of matter of fact, and they did it. And then all of a sudden they wake up and their marriage is falling apart. And now they're questioning whether they should have taken that assignment. And it's a very real engagement drops dramatically. It's a very real issue. And so I love that you're talking about this. Give me some ideas and some examples and some specifics about what companies can do to prevent that type of scenario.
Yeah. So here's just a really quick stat. For example, over the years, people who work with a coach who is expert in job search, on average, find employment about 50% faster than people who are looking for a job on their own. Now, this is the gap has decreased a little bit lately just because the job market's so hot right now. But in our world, the average for the Bureau of Labor Statistics to find employment is about 22 weeks. And at Impact Group, our average is 13 to 14 weeks. So even in a great economy for jobs, then there's still a 2-month difference in the amount of time it can take to find a job.
Yeah.
In a more difficult economy, obviously, it widens much more significantly. So that's one very simple example of the work that we do at Impact Group, which is providing partners and spouses with a one-on-one coach to help them with the reemployment process in the new area. Because again, if your wife did look for a job in North Carolina, she would not have had a network. She would have been starting from scratch, having to figure out, what do I want to do the same thing?
And she did. And so just to kind of fill you in on exactly what happened, right? She did look for a job out there. She was kind of a sales call center, sales director kind of a role in the past in both Tampa and Dallas, where we had lived before. She found a job doing that at the YMCA of the Triangle, which, was probably a $15,000 to $20,000 pay cut for her, and a way different caliber of position for her. Before we had our first son. So, she did not rely on her network. She didn't have old bosses and old colleagues that she could call and say, hey, you got anything over there? And so, that's a real thing.
Yeah, it's a challenge. So I would say best-in-class companies are including spouse employment support or partner employment support, depending on the policy, to support the transition. And again, this does not have to be a huge benefit from a cost perspective. In the grand scheme of the entire relocation package, we're talking oftentimes, maybe 2% of the cost of 1 to 2% of the entire cost. So it's a modest investment for something that can make a huge difference in the in the result of, engagement, productivity, retention, etc.
What types of impacts to results or to engagement and to the stickiness of assignments, the success rate of assignments are you seeing?
Well, I think the main thing is that if the spouse is stressing about their job, then that is going to rub off on the employee, first of all, at home.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're going to start calling during the afternoon saying, when are you coming home? And then depending on how that's affecting, like you said, you have friends and colleagues who have had that start to deteriorate in their marriage. Well, then that has a huge productivity effect. So
that's like a nuclear impact, is what nuclear negative impact for sure.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where even if it doesn't go like a total blackout, like it's a failed relocation, there is still significant opportunity for productivity, savings, and engagement in the fact of helping people stay focused rather than just having that anxiety of, oh my gosh, like what's going on with my family in this new situation, or regret that they accepted an offer because of what's happening to their family.
And sometimes they look for a job to go back where they came from.
Yeah.
This happened to us with a general manager that we hired from Charlotte, North Carolina. He came up to our Cincinnati branch, was with us for a year. It was great, did a lot of great things, but he just had so many family commitments back home, with relatives and things that we just weren't even aware of, that pulled him back there, and it didn't work out,
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. Well, and like what you're talking about, with just the personal commitments, and what's going on with the personal side. I'm curious with your wife and your situation, when you guys did decide to start your family and you were in a relatively new environment at that point, were there additional challenges that you guys experienced? Because that's one of the things that we see a lot of times also, is especially on the international side, people will say, oh, it's a great time to start a family, but it's also extremely challenging to start a family if you're completely on your own. You don't have support. You don't even have friends.
Yeah,
maybe
it was rough. I mean, it was super rough because here we are in North Carolina. Her family's up in New York. My family's in Texas and Oklahoma, and we have no support system. We really have no close friends that we could trust. So we have no childcare. We have no, watch the baby while I go do this, or, whatever, just that little things that you need to fill in the gaps, in your life, or a date night or a doctor's appointment or whatever. And we don't have any of that, and so, and as first time parents, I mean, it was extremely difficult on us. It wears on me a lot too, as the one who's now working as the primary breadwinner, because now I need to be a lot of support things for her and for him. And, so it was tough. I mean, and I, so yes, it was difficult.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of I love what your company does. And I love the idea of relocating the whole person, the whole family. You're relocating the whole family. You're not just relocating the one person,
we're relocating people, not just jobs, not just the stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's important. When I was recruited to university, one of the things that sold me on this company, because I didn't have much of an impression coming in, but what really sold me was they flew me up for an in-person interview. Mm-hmm. They flew my wife and my son up.
Wow.
Put us up at this beautiful hotel, interviewed me for a full day, like did the whole car wash interview thing, right? But in the meantime, they had two people from the office take her out, go do an area tour, go look at the different, oh, you live in this neighborhood, you live in this neighborhood, here's the Starbucks, here's whatever, here's the gym, here's the daycare, here's the whatever. And then at night we did something at our owner's home in the evening, and it was just lovely. But they really were all about making sure that my family could see themselves being here.
That's special.
Yeah. Loved it.
Yeah. Uh, I know you love stories. So one of the stories that sticks out in my mind over just that personal aspect of the relocation. Again, we were talking about people who've just recently had young children as well. So this is a family that moved internationally, and then there was a new baby in the picture. The wife was just feeling extremely isolated and was sitting at home all day with a baby and had no other connections, no other network, and was really just desperate for help. Turns out their policy did include our services, which include beyond job search support, also what we call settling in support or integration support. So help getting acclimated into the new area. I like to think of it almost as like a blend between life coaching and concierge support. So how can we help get you plugged in and feeling connected to people? Well, their policy included this service, but it was probably mentioned in one call right off the bat with the husband, and he's like, "Oh yeah, well, we don't need that," or
we'll let you know. Sure, yeah, we'll let
you know. It wasn't any sort of actual conversation where the spouse said, "Yes, sign me up for that."
Hello.
So anyway, she finds out through another spouse that this is available, and she goes straight to her mobility contact saying, like, I need this help. And when she connects with our coach at the time, she was just desperate, and she actually said, yeah, my husband talked to the other guys in the office, and he said, oh, don't worry, all of our wives cried for the first 6 months too, so you'll get past this.
Oh my gosh.
And so, there could be other issues in that relationship. However, at the same time, I think the moral of the story here is that proactively addressing these issues can offer a tremendous amount of well-being and support, and ultimately productivity, because this assignment could have very well gone all the way south.
Crying for the first 6 months of an assignment should not be the normal.
It should not be the threshold that we judge our performance as well as mobility professionals.
We can do so much better than you're going to cry for 6 months, but after that, it's going to be okay. It's like we can do better than that, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, let's raise the bar.
Yeah, for sure. You guys wrote this an amazing report here called The People Perspective on Relocation, and you talk about human-centered relocation, and honestly, obviously it's human-centered relocation. We're relocating people, but what made you write this report about the people perspective on relocation? What was that journey like? What were you hoping to discover with that?
We decided that we wanted to do a survey that was looking at things different from what you see in the typical RMC or van line survey, things that go beyond just the demographics or just the policy aspects, but what's going on with the people who are relocating, and what can we learn that can then inform some of the policy decisions that we make going forward. And so that was the idea, and we got a tremendous amount of data, also similar to others on demographics, but then also about what people were feeling at various points in the relocation process. We got a lot of data on the spouse career journey. We got data on what millennials were prioritizing in their moves as well. So hopefully this is something that the industry can just continue to learn and grow from, so that we understand what is going on with the that human perspective.
Well, it's an incredibly comprehensive report, and there's some phenomenal infographics here. But I wanted to know, in your own words, what were some of the aha moments from this study?
Yeah, probably the first one is related to career development. So we found out that 51% of the respondents who were employees said that the number one driver for why they accepted the relocation offer was career development. And so that is really actually more of that was defined in the survey as more of a lateral move, expansion of experience, learning new things. 22% is focused on a promotion. So altogether, about 70, almost 75%, 3/4 of the respondents have some element of career development, either focused on just growing their experience or for a promotion. So we know that the number one driver for why people accept an offer is because this is a good career move. I mean, why else would you go through this?
Well, and then so that I want to take that and I want to leapfrog on another topic or something because you also go through here, and I think it's really interesting that you profile the different stakeholders here in relocation, right? So you have the relocating employee. I'm reading here, it tends to be male, white, early 40s, highly educated. I love the fact that you even analyze when and how they like to communicate. So this type of person tends to like to communicate via email in the evenings, whereas his spouse is typically female, white, early 40s, educated job seeker. She prefers phone and email in the mornings, which I think is frankly very interesting for all of you out there, whether you're a mobility manager or you're a service provider who's trying to actually communicate with these personality types here. I think that's fascinating. And then the third type is the relocating employee single. Could be male or female. Tends to be more diverse ethnically. Tends to be younger millennials. Highly educated and enjoys email in the mornings. Before I get to my main question, did text come up at all?
People absolutely are. I don't know the details on that particular question on text, but definitely text is becoming more and more of a preference for sure. So we're seeing that too. We're
seeing that too. But going back to my original observation here, so the relocating employee tends to be white, male, early 40s. And before, and as we have on the screen here below, 51% of respondents accepted assignments for career development, 22 accepted for promotion, combined 73% because it was good for their career in general. And we're talking about mostly white men taking this. How does that impact and inform the way we look at opportunities for women and career pathing and relocation and all that?
Yeah, you've just hit on one of my favorite topics about where that link is between talent management and mobility. And I know this is something that in the industry we've talked about for a long time. How do we see ourselves as more change agents for the talent space? I think how we get there is by looking at data like this, by looking at what drives people to accept offers. Those kinds of conversations are going to help us be seen as more of those consultants in the talent space, more so than policy recommendations relating to some of the nuts and bolts of the process. So my perspective on this is, if we don't have the right kind of career conversations with women up front about mobility, and that's not part of the development we're offering our managers, then we're going to continue to struggle with getting women in the pipeline for mobility, which means that we're not getting women in the pipeline for leadership positions, because we know that mobility is core to how people progress in their career, especially at the larger companies where you need to have an international assignment. You need to be in the field, and you need to be in corporate, and so you need to be mobile. So if women are not mobile, women are not going to get to the top in these organizations.
Do you think that that's because women aren't being offered these opportunities? Do you think it's because women aren't accepting them? Do you think what is that? Can you dig a little deeper for me?
Well, if there were a silver bullet, we would have figured it out by now. This is a complex problem. So there's no one answer. You can't say if we did this one thing, it's going to solve the whole problem. I see it as a combination of several things. One, like I said, how do we train managers to have the career conversations that include mobility as part of their regular ongoing conversations, and make sure that you're having the same kind of conversation with men and women. There are some studies out there that have shown that men will admit, male managers especially, will admit, you know what, if I think about it, I have a different type of conversation about careers with my female leaders as I do with male leaders. So there is that unconscious bias. The challenge, however, and this is something that we are involved in every day because of our leadership development practice at Impact Group as well. Just going through a unconscious bias training is not going to solve the problem. People's behaviors around bias are not necessarily tied to what they actually know about bias. So that is something that has to.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? So people's behaviors around biases are not actually tied to what they know about biases.
Yeah. So knowing that I have a bias does not mean that I don't act on it. Because the way biases work is that there are shortcuts in our brain, and they're there for a reason. Evolutionarily speaking, we have biases for very important reasons. Right. And breaking up that highway that is the shortcut is difficult, and it requires intentional effort. So just knowing that that men and women behave differently in a meeting, for example, is different than a manager making a very specific conscious effort to be prepared to solicit input from women during a meeting differently, or to plan for that career conversation with women as they would have for it with men, just because, like I said, a lot of times the conversation will just flow naturally, and this is the way I always have the conversation. And so then it's very easy for it to go in that short circuit way where you always have it. So it requires more effort. And unless you're willing to put the effort in, that's where the knowing actually turns into the behavior change. And you have to put the effort in again and again and again. It just doesn't happen with one time.
What do some of those efforts look like? So you have someone that realizes they may have a bias, or they may look back and they may say, here's the choices I've made. Maybe I have a bias. And now they're like, hey, I want to correct this, or I want to unshortcut myself in this way. What are some of those efforts that they need to be diligent with?
Well, some of them can also be taken by the company. So some of the organizations that we are working with, that we see, where they just say every slate of a potential position needs to have a diverse slate. There needs to be women, and there needs to be racial diversity in the potential candidates. And that doesn't mean you have to choose someone who's not qualified, but it does mean that we need to make sure that we're opening up the positions and not just tapping Joe because we know Joe and Joe's come through for us before in the past. But what we might not know is that Joe's wife has elderly parents at home. And that moving is actually a major imposition for his family. But his wife doesn't work, and so there's an assumption by senior leadership that Joe is mobile because...
Yeah. So maybe his kids, the first two times he moved, were 3 years old, and they were 7 years old, but now they're 15, right, and they're going to lose their mind if they move again. Yeah. Maybe now his parents are 10 years older, and now they need his care. Maybe his wife told him, if you move me one more time, we're done. right? I mean, these are all like real life scenarios.
Right.
Meanwhile, you have, you know, Joan over here who hasn't gotten the look because, you know, I mean, why didn't Joan get the look?
Joan maybe didn't get the look because Joan has a husband who's a VP at a big company down the street. And so if someone says, oh my gosh, Joan would never move. Well, they don't know that Joan would never move. They never asked her. And so that's an example of bias that that happens every day because people just assume that they know what is in people's minds, in people's worlds. And I think there's a lot more that is out there that we need to do more than assume. Those conversations between managers and individuals about their career, as well as HR, they need to just have mobility as a staple for the conversation.
This is so interesting to me. I think I love this. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up.
Let's look up a couple. We got a couple folks checking in here. Always love to show the love to the folks that have hung in here and watching. Jamie Massar, hi Ben and Lauren. Cheers from Chile, Mississippi. Hey Jamie, how's it going?
Hi.
There's snow on the ground out here, Jamie. Beat that. All right, Victoria McCullough. I wrote an article. It takes a village to relocate an employee. You are so right about the holistic approach. I often have to work with the trailing spouses. She means accompanying talent. And some are traumatized, even if it's not their first relocation.
Yeah, a lot of times people assume because they are historical movers that they've got it. And we hear all the time, actually, especially with internationals, but also domestically, that, you know, we hear people say, I didn't know that this service was available. I'm so glad it was proactively offered to me because I don't know if I would have necessarily picked up the phone and said, yes, I want it, because maybe they were an experienced mover. Maybe they didn't even know it was available. But then when they actually have the service, then they say, you know, this was something that added so much value to my experience that a lot of times the spouses will say, this was something that was just for me. Everything else, people were asking things of me to do for my husband's career or my wife's stuff, but this was for me. And I really appreciate that the company thought to do that for me. Just like what you said about the story with your wife. That was a game changer for you because they included your family so much.
And she was happy, and that made it so much easier. And then she was actually pushing, and she was on board. I mean, it was actually kind of a closing tool, you know? It was like, let me sell her because I realized she's, frankly, as big or bigger of a decision maker than I was in my own career.
Yeah.
You know? I could totally see, you know, the spouse feeling like this whole thing is about my spouse. Finally, somebody thought of me.
Yeah. Well, Ben, you know this. I don't know how many of your viewers know this. I am actually planning on having a baby on Friday, and it is planned to have that happen. We have a 7-year-old, and she is getting so much big sister stuff. And I think she's got it with the big sister stuff. And so, you know, we got something for her with the birth of the baby. And this is something that has nothing to do with being a big sister. It's just something for her. And, you know, those are the kinds of things that, frankly, you know, are going to help her accept this change in our lives a little bit more.
Right. That's great. And congratulations. I know when we were scheduling this, you're like, I don't know. I'm going to put on the calendar, but I don't know.
Anything can happen.
Well, I'm going to ask you personally because you brought it up. I mean, you know, here you are, CEO of a company. You know, you're wearing a lot of hats, and you're 9 months pregnant. How are you doing all this?
Well, you know what? Like Victoria said, it takes a village to move a family. It takes a village to run a company. So obviously I'm CEO, I'm captain of the ship, I say where we're going, but I can't do this alone. It's all about the team. So what is exciting is that I actually announced a pretty significant reorganization just at the very beginning of the year that has already started to yield some great results. So I named a new COO, Eric Brewer. He actually was our SVP of sales, and so promoted him, and then changed up some of the roles that all reported to him. So really, I see my primary job as visionary, as innovation, as how do I connect with clients and do what we're doing here.
Right. I mean, do the face stuff and the image stuff and be out there out front, Yeah.
And frankly, I also have to acknowledge that some of my strengths are more in that space than in the day-to-day execution focus, which, we all have our strengths. So it's part of recognizing where we're at our highest and best use. So I'm so thrilled that right now I've got the right people in the right seats guiding the ship. And so therefore I have total confidence that while I'm gone, the company is in great hands. And so we're going to be smooth sailing, Lord willing.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, obviously I'm around. As an owner, you never leave. But I'm going to take the first month, pretty hardcore to myself, and then after that start kind of being available reactively and stuff. So it's great to just be part of a team that there's a lot of trust and confidence that we're doing the right stuff.
I want to ask you really quick, because I'm fascinated by this kind of stuff. How did you figure out that highest and best use of your talents? What was that? Was that a long process? Was that recently? Did you figure that out 10 years ago? I mean, what was that journey for you like?
That's a great question, Ben, because I would say I've known this about myself for a while, but I think that especially as women, we feel like we need to be doing everything to steer the ship, to batten the hatches, and so I think it took me longer than it should have to put this COO role in place, because I wanted to make sure that people felt like I was there for them. But the key is I'm still there for them. I'm just going to be there in a different way that I have high hopes will actually be better for the company overall.
Well, and in a lot of ways, you're providing more support, not less.
Right.
Right. So that's cool. That's something I struggle with too. People have told me in my career I'm not an operations person. I've always taken that as a slight, and it wasn't until very recently that I've just come to grips with the highest. I love the way you phrase it too. Highest and best use. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I could be a good operations person, but I could be a great this, right? And it's like, yeah. I just need to go be a great this and not worry about it.
Exactly. And so I think what is going to happen is that the people who are now reporting into Eric are going to feel that much more supported, because they're going to be working with someone who's much better at holding them accountable and focused on, driving results. Because I mean, I'm not someone who is distracted by shiny objects. I will say that is probably more of the first generation entrepreneur. I'm the second generation operator, so I have a little bit of both in me. But I will say that I think that people are going to get more out of this structure, like you said. The other piece is I would say I've known this. But then the other thing is, okay, so then how do I put all the pieces together? And sometimes it just takes a little effort to figure that out too. Mm-hmm. Because things don't necessarily always just come into place because either you don't have the right people or, you don't have the budget or whatever it is. So, now it's like, okay, we've got it all together.
We got some folks checking in here as well. We got Vinny Valverde.
Hey, Vinny.
Hi there. Vinny's in the house from the left coast out in Portland. What's up, Vinny? Love Vinny. Do you know Vinny, by the way? Have you ever met Vinny?
I don't think I know Vinny.
Oh my gosh. He's over at Nike. He was at Trimble for a while. Just such an amazing person.
Hey,
Great.
Vinny.
I love people. That's the reason we do this show, is to highlight people. He's a great one. Get out of here, Vinny. Go away. All right. Let's see here. Gujarat Packers. Hi, Ben and Lauren. Hey, Gujarat. If you're still on, Gujarat, where are you from? Because it sounds like you're from somewhere. Let's put you up there. Rory Ramirez. Hello, everyone from Mini Moves in Broadview, Illinois. Rory always checks in. Rory might have like the Cal Ripken streak for the most check-ins here on Love and Relo. Love it.
I say you have some regulars.
It's really cool. Sometimes they call me a big teddy bear and embarrass me, but that's fine. Tim Quirk, age. So Tim has a comment on something you said. Tim Quirk says, age doesn't matter for kids when they move. It is all a matter personally. It's all a matter of personality, how they handle it. I think personally, how they handle it is what he's talking about. I know Tim for a while. I worked with him at a previous company. He relocated his family up to Rochester. I know his kids, Fausto and Jimena, and his wife. Yeah, I mean, kids are people too. I mean, let me ask you this. Is there do you handle kids? I mean, do you do services for children?
At Impact Group, we support parents handling their kids. So we're not going to focus on working one-on-one with kids. But I think the best support that we can provide is how do we support parents in supporting their kids? Because that's where the kids need the support. And you're right that kids of any age can struggle with a relocation. It's hard saying goodbye to friends no matter what age. So the key that we focus on in our integration programs is how can we give parents some coping tools for themselves, as well as some strategies that they can employ either for how to talk with their kids, or maybe how to talk with teachers or administrators about the transition. What kind of questions do they need to be asking of the schools to make sure that they're getting the right information about how their kids are adjusting. Maybe even just helping to brainstorm ideas on, okay, your kid, you just moved and it's your kid's birthday. So that's a challenge because, how are you going to have a birthday party and they don't know anybody, but, are you going to invite them over? Let's put a plan together, and how can we help you put that plan together to orchestrate that birthday party with, getting the information from the school, etc. Yeah.
Hey, here's a bright, shiny object for you. Kids assistants. Just saying. Jamie Masler, how do you, here you go. Here's one for you personally. How do you let it go at the end of the day with such a busy schedule? I have problems turning it off.
Well, I think we all do. I will admit, I'm checking email all through the evening. My husband is an entrepreneur too. He's on the phone probably even more than me, dealing with things coming in. At the same time, I would just say, what are the critical boundaries that I want to respect? And so some of those things are, if I'm at the dinner table, I don't want to be dealing with my phone. If I'm playing a game, like Sorry, we play Sorry all the time with our 7-year-old. The phone is not by me. And those are the kind of strategies that we actually talk about with job seekers as well, because you could be just wanting to go and check on an Amazon delivery. You open your email and then all of a sudden, you get a rejection, and now your whole night is shot and you feel terrible and you're in a bad mood around your family. So there's different strategies that we employ with them in terms of maybe encouraging a different email address to manage your job search out of, for example, so that you can check one email address and focus on, whatever you're doing without getting sucked in. But I think a lot of it is just making sure that you're clear on what your boundaries are, and then how can you, like we were talking about earlier, how do you enforce that? Because, we were talking about biases earlier, but habits work the exact same way. Sometimes you just pick up your phone just because you don't know what else to do.
That is so true. Don't we do that? We just pick up our phone like all the time. Like, oh, let me just look at this.
Like, I'm bored. Well,
Yeah.
and that's actually something I was talking about with other parents, and especially, as kids get a little older and dealing with social media and anxiety, that, how do we as a culture address boredom now? Because if you're bored, you just pick up your phone and you go on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever it is. And, is that the right thing to do?
Definitely not. And that's definitely another episode. And somebody could train me how not to use,
Don't worry.
somebody could train me how not to use my phone. Let's see here. Joe Fick, hi from Malibu. Ben and Lauren. Joe's going to be on with us tomorrow from Pivot app. Looking forward.
Fabulous.
Layla Wallet, hi. I'm so happy to have come across this while working on LinkedIn. Also,
yeah, Layla's a recruiter for us.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great.
Layla.
I don't know Ben. Hi. But have to like a fellow Texan. Hello from St. Augustine, Florida, and thinking of you on Friday, Lauren.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, Leila.
Isn't that nice when people just check in, just say nice
Yes.
things like, and then speaking of which, Anthony Walmsley from the UK. Hey, Ben, it's your Stoker again. I think he means stalker. Maybe it's British for stalker. I don't know. Love you, man. Joe Fick, let's see. Anthony, flying out to Michigan, Kalamazoo in July, then off to North Carolina. Might see you on the way down there. Come on by. Rory Ramirez, Ben is awesome. That's very nice. I'll take it. I'll take it. I come on LinkedIn for affirmation. But so anyway, I mean, that's, we're kind of running out of time. There's so much to talk about because you have so much wonderful content. And for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with Lauren or the Impact Group, I want you to go check out Lauren's page on LinkedIn because she publishes so many fantastic articles. Every couple months she'll publish a long form piece that has a really cool hot take, and I love people that have the courage to say something that's maybe kind of counterintuitive or a little edgy. One that you said that I loved was, oh gosh, what was it? Hold on, I'm going to look it up right now. It was about it was the second one, second to last, putting an end to, quote, the first female, quote, headlines. And,
wouldn't it be nice if it's not special anymore when it's the first female CEO or first female board member of whatever company? And it would be nice if that's not a news headline anymore.
That would be nice. We'll get there.
Yeah.
I think we're all doing our part.
And let's help mobility be part of the solution.
Yeah. Agreed. Roy Ramirez, does your person's company contact you, or do you contact the relocation agent? I guess is what I'm asking. I missed the first 30 minutes, so I might have missed it. That's for you. Okay.
So in our case, oftentimes we see the best practice is that if someone has the services in policy for spouse and family transition support or spouse dual career support, that then we would proactively reach out to the spouse, to the employee, to explain the benefit directly. What we find a lot of times is there's just so much that the relocation counselors need to know about all the aspects of the relocation, and it's impossible to be able to be experts on everything. And so what we find works best, especially like I said, people are excited to hear from us because, again, they know that we're going to help them with a really critical part, especially for the spouses with their job search and or acclimating into the new area. So I know there's generally a ton of different touch points in the process, but people oftentimes are excited to hear from us, and then we will explain what we can do, how we can support them. And that's a free call. If they don't end up taking the service, there's no charge. But we're able to say, okay, here's how we can help with your job search, or here's how we can help you integrate into the new community.
Rory has a follow-up question. How can I share your business with people?
Well, I would say share. Please feel free to share this live webcast. And then please feel free to comment on any articles that I do post monthly on a blog article. And of course, just spread the word. Thank you for that lovely offer. Thank you.
Nice. Isn't that nice when people just want to help you because they just like you and they want to?
You know what I find, Ben, is most of the time people do want to help. A lot of times people are afraid to ask for help because you feel like you're going to be an imposition on someone. But the reality is most people want to help others. And, you know, it's nice to realize that and accept that.
Well, I feel like the other side of that too is not only do people like to help others, but oftentimes we get in our own way because we don't accept when people reach out and they want to help us. We don't accept it. We have to be open to accepting the gifts and accepting the blessings of life and other people's love for us, you know? And it's like, that was something for me. I'm better at it than, you know, it's not something I struggle with a lot. I mean, I'm pretty open to like, hey, sure, you want to help me out? Sure, no problem. You want to buy lunch? That's cool. Great. You know, I'm accepting of that, but there's certain people that are just, that don't accept help. And so I would encourage those out there that are watching this, if people ask to help you, just say yes. Accept it.
Yes, I will gladly accept help.
Yeah.
And, you know, a corollary to that on the help factor, but back to women in leadership, is there's data out there that shows that women won't apply to a job unless they meet about 90 to 100% of the qualifications. And men will apply to a job if they meet about 60% of the qualifications. And so that's a perfect situation where, you know, even if you don't know if you're entirely qualified, if you're interested in a job as a woman or as a man, but maybe, you know, on the fence about trying to figure it out, go ahead and apply. That's something that I heard said once. It's your job to find out if you're interested in a job. It's the hiring manager's job to find out if you're qualified for it. And so you don't need to figure out if you're qualified for it or not. That's not your role.
I love that. It's your job to find out if you're interested in a job. It's the hiring manager's job to find out if you're qualified for it. That's fantastic. Speaking of jobs, Leo Capotorto.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Leo.
Says, hey, Ben and Lauren. IG, he doesn't mean Instagram, I don't think. He means Impact Group. My very first Relo job.
Yes. Actually, we were just talking about Leo today. We had an international potluck at Impact Group. And yes. Leo came up because we were talking about how he learned English, which...
Well, apparently I don't speak very well either because I've been calling him Leo forever, and his name's Leo now. You're telling me?
Well, he's from Argentina, so
Leo, bro, let me know if I'm mispronouncing your name for like 20 years. Gee whiz, man! I can't say Lilo right. I can't say Leo right. I'm like all over the place. All right. He's also another fantastic person that I've
absolutely met. Love Leo.
Great heart. Dan O'Sullivan, hey Ben, keep killing it. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate you. And then lastly, Janet Turner, Rory must be reading The Go-Giver. Kudos to Rory.
Oh, I love it.
Have you by any chance read The Go-Giver?
I am familiar with it, but I've not read it.
I would love to invite you to read it. We have the author coming on next week, Bob Berg.
Fabulous.
Yep. So we are doing a virtual book club on LinkedIn Live. So all of our Love and Relo community, not that you're going to have time to read a book, you're going to be like having a baby.
I've signed up for Audible, so I'm going to be listening.
There you go. Perfect. Well, you can listen to The Go-Giver on 1.25 speed in 2.5 hours. I can tell you for a fact.
Okay.
So we will be talking about it next Tuesday. And then we will be talking to Bob Berg, the author, on Wednesday, who will be answering our questions and discussing some of the feedback that came out of our talk on Tuesday. So a 2-day Go-Giver virtual LinkedIn Live book club. Super excited about. Hopefully we can do this with more authors if this goes well and people participate. So hopefully you can participate or just be a mom or whatever?
I don't know if next week is going to be the time when I'm going to to join you on that, but I will definitely download it. So thanks.
Yeah,
For the
this has been wonderful, Lauren. Thank you so much for coming on. I've really appreciated our time together. Thank you so much for being on Love and Reload.
Thank you, Ben. Bye, everybody.